What's the scariest disease you've heard of? Story 1, dementia, and because you basically sit back and watch as it slowly starts to eat away at you, but there's nothing you can do. I work in a memory care unit. Watching what dementia and Alzheimer do is beyond horrifying. They erase you. Sometimes it moves quickly, other times it's slow. You forget things at first, little things, then more. You forget your family, who you are. And one of my ladies cries every day because she can't remember who she is. You forget how to dress yourself, go to the bathroom by yourself, how to bathe. Eventually, you may also forget how to chew and swallow your food. Maybe I forgot how to speak. You talk, but what comes out won't make sense. It's just babbling. Sometimes family members won't come visit because seeing mom/dad like this scares them. Don't do that. These people remember they had a family. They may not know you, but they'll remember their love for this person. Stay away too long, and they'll forget you. Too many of my residents don't have visitors because their sons or daughters don't want to see them like this. Two of my residents don't recognize their own children anymore when they do get a rare visit. I see the beginning stages of this monster in my own mother, and it terrifies me. But if she gets bad with it, I'll be there for her. I won't push her away and forget her because she's forgetting. Story 2, multiple symptom atrophy, MSA. Not a lot is known about this one, but for my grandma, it started with shakiness pretty young and stayed like that for quite some time. That's the easy part. As my sisters and I got older, she became less and less of herself. She started spending most of her time in the recliner because she could barely move. She had no clue who we were, and she couldn't really talk anymore. Eventually, she moved from the recliner to a bed, as a shell of a human being whose body was dying piece by piece. Her passing at a relatively young age, under 70, was a relief because she suffered for so long. Certainly not a fate I'd wish for anyone to go through or watch someone go through. Story 3, glioblastoma MTF ended my wife of 16 months. My grandmother passed from this as well. First thing she noticed was her hand going weak. Couldn't grip things as strongly as she should have been able to. Then, her arm started going weak. Eventually, the left side of her body basically gave out. They operated, did radiation and chemo. She went through absolute hell with it. Dead in just a few months after diagnosis. She was healthy as a horse otherwise. Regularly went to the doctor for checkups, and always had good blood work and other test results. Went from babysitting my daughter 5 days a week and getting by on her own with no issue to death within a year. Story 4, cholangiocarcinoma, bile duct cancer. I was diagnosed with it a year and a half ago at the age of 39. It is a masked, aggressive, extremely deadly form of cancer. The only way to treat it is if you catch it in its first stage, but it usually doesn't manifest physical symptoms until late stage 2, early stage 3. Even catching it early, the 5-year survival rate is 15 to 25%. We caught mine in stage 1, but it attached itself to my hepatic artery. While I was off chemo and getting radiation to try to shake it loose, it spread through my abdomen. Now my tumor markers have spiked. I've been in a lot of pain, which leads to painkillers and their side effects, and I'm waiting on a phone call with the results from the CT scan I got Saturday. Let's just say I'm not waiting on good news. Could be weeks or months, but I probably don't have much more to live than that. This particular cancer is a gnarly one. Only one way to cure it, and you have to get lucky to get there. Nothing I did caused it, I just got hit with crap luck. Never even heard of it until a year and a half ago. Now I'm waiting to see how soon it will finish off me. I just want a little more time. I don't want to stop seeing my 8-year-old son yet. My greatest fear is leaving him and my wife. That's why this is the scariest disease I've ever heard of. Are there worse, more gruesome diseases out there? Absolutely. But this one is the one staring me down right now, and I'm running out of ways to fight it. Story 5, sepsis. My aunt got hit with sepsis about a year ago. Was totally fine, out having lunch and laughing with friends on Thursday. Was dead by Saturday morning. We'll never know what caused it. It happened so quickly, they were never able to determine the source. It could be as simple as a cut on your finger that gets infected. Damn. A roommate and good friend of mine almost died from sepsis. He had edema in his legs and bumped his shin against the corner of a box, and the wound just wouldn't close because the skin was macerated. He was really good about keeping it clean, changing bandages, etc., but it still got infected. I didn't notice until it was bad enough that he was confused, etc. Like he would start a sentence talking about one thing, fall asleep for a few seconds, and wake up talking about something else entirely and not realize it. Crap like that. I finally convinced him to go to the ER. They told him that if he'd waited even another day or two, he would probably be dead. He wound up being in the hospital for 45 days on the serious industrial strength antibiotics, but he lived. He did wind up going back into the hospital a few years later for the same thing, but it was only like 21 days that time because we caught it sooner. Story 6, Kuru disease. Years ago, when cannibalism was a thing in Papua New Guinea, a lot of citizens were dying from this disease. Basically, it's caused by the ingestion of a weird amount of folded proteins. In Papua New Guinea, they used to have the tradition to cook and eat deceased family members. I don't remember why. Women and kids were the ones most likely to have this disease since they were the ones who consumed the brain, organ with a lot of folded proteins. This was almost epidemic since people who were infected would also, once they're dead, be eaten, spreading the disease to other people. It was completely fatal. Story 7, Rabies. My dad was telling me about his time in the military. He was serving in Vietnam and a guy got bit by a monkey. Another guy was making fun of him because he was going to have to go through getting all the shots. The guy that had been bitten got so pissed, and the guy mocking him that he bit him, so now they would both have to get the shots. Those shots are awful, too. You have to give several intramuscular shots and then inject all around the site of the bite scratch. I had a pregnant patient in the ER once who had struggled to get pregnant. She was almost 40 and had taken in a stray kitten who started seizing and attacking her. I don't know much about veterinary medicine, so I don't know how rabies testing works, but I think the results of whether the kitten had rabies or not were still pending. But because of the symptoms, they said it was likely, and that she absolutely had to get the shots. It pretty much wasn't optional. The cat had scratched her hands and arms up, and I had to give her a ton of injections around all those scratches, including around her nail beds. It was awful. She and I were both crying as I did it. Story 8, Addison's disease. It causes low cortisol levels, and you could die from literally being stressed out or catching a cold. People who have it have to be on steroids for life. If something were to happen and they couldn't take their meds, they could die within 2 days in extreme cases of adrenal crisis. My dad has Addison's. Took forever for him to get it diagnosed because it just wasn't something labs were run for normally. Once they got the meds all figured out, it was like I got a whole new dad in some ways, much less likely to raise his voice or lose his temper. Probably didn't help that he has always been one of those guys who always has to be doing something, whether at work, school teacher, then principal, or finding some project at home. One Sunday morning when I was 17, my dad woke me up to take him to the hospital. He was in crisis, mom was at work, and I didn't think my dad would survive the drive. We lived 45 miles from the closest ER. The drive took 35 minutes on country roads. When I got to the ER, I made the mistake of pulling up to the main entrance. Ran in, told the check-in nurse my dad was dying on the back seat and I needed help getting him in right now. She told me he needed to come in and check in. I walked out, peeled around to the ambulance entrance because I knew I could get straight to a nurse that way. They got him in, stabilized, and he lived. Scariest morning of my life. 20-ish years later, he's doing well, retired and enjoying his life, hopefully for years to come. Story 9, Munchausen by proxy, especially in mothers, and I think it's worse because of social media. I knew a woman who had a kid my son's age. She put this kid through hell all for likes and sympathy from strangers on the internet. She eventually ended the child. This was over a decade ago, and it still bothers me. She was in our social circle, so not friends, but we knew her and her kid. My mom has Munchausen by proxy, and my sister and I were her little science experiments. She pretended my sister had a made-up seizure disorder, and she still unfortunately believes it. She had me taking insanely high doses of multiple SSRIs, like 300 milligrams of Zoloft and 60 milligrams of Paxil together when I was 11, and convinced everyone else that I was psychotic. I saw through it, though, and was too vocal about it, so she disowned me when I was 14 and my sister got taken away. No criminal case was brought up, though. Years later, she moved in with my otherwise healthy grandparents to take care of them. Suddenly, they were wheelchair-bound and incontinent. They were both dead within a few years. Needless to say, I stay far away from her. Story 10. I'm going to say the common one. Depression. Imagine there's nothing wrong with you, but a madness that slowly takes everything from you until it forces you to end it all at your own hand. If it is not one of the most horrible conditions, I don't know what is. As somebody who had what I consider very severe affective problems since kindergarten, thank you for this. I feel seen, heard, and valid. Your description of it is perfect. It's the only terminal illness where the sufferer is not dying against their will. How messed up is that? I'm tired of people spewing crap like, you could be born without a limb or have a chromosomal anomaly. Why does a condition have to be obviously visible or exotic to be seen as destructive? I see people call visibly and physically ill individuals strong or warriors, but I've never been called a jerk warrior for living since my formative childhood years, with the only terminal illness that doesn't end you against your will. I think anyone living with any life-altering or threatening mental disorder is a warrior. Story 11. My disease. CNS vasculitis is secondary to my rheumatoid arthritis. I've studied this disease and read almost every study on it. CNS vasculitis is an autoimmune disease attacking the blood vessels of the brain and spinal cord. It causes the vessels to narrow, aneurysms rupture and necrotize. This causes areas of the brain to die, leading to frequent strokes, vision problems, neurological deterioration and deficits, cognitive deterioration, heart and breathing problems, and seizures. I have significantly deteriorated ever since it started. Prognosis without treatment is 100% fatal. Prognosis with treatment still has a high mortality rate, and most die rapidly. The progression is rapid, and stroke is the major death cause in CNS patients. I'm allergic to many of the treatments, so I resorted to palliative care for pain management. And to be comfortable in the little time I've got left, my illness is terminal, and I have accepted it gracefully because my twin sister is waiting in heaven for me. She passed away 6 months ago. I'm ready to leave this world once more, as I've had in my other lives. Story 12. Scleroderma is an autoimmune disease that causes hardening of epithelial tissue. It finished off my mom. She went from a busy professional to a walking skeleton in 2 years. The treatments are rudimentary, ineffective, and because they're immunosuppressive, they destroy your immune system. You can have it as a localized dermal condition, whereas the worst-case scenario is skin grafts. However, if it's systemic, it's going to end you unless something else does first. If you're lucky, it destroys your pericardium and you just die of heart failure. My mom was not lucky. It destroyed her whole lower GI system. In retrospect, I wish she'd chosen hospice over treatment towards the end. She had 4 abdominal surgeries in the last 2 months of life. Brutal. Story 13. Multiple sclerosis. My first girlfriend was diagnosed with it when she was 16. It finished off her self-esteem and she never recovered. She didn't even want a relationship because she thought that she could never be loved. So I had to work hard to show her otherwise. She would flare up every few months and go to the hospital. Broke up with her because her family tried to push her on me too hard. Even after the breakup, I was the one having to take her to the hospital. She never could finish a semester once she transferred to the university. Her older siblings used her as a babysitter. Married a douchebag who cheated on her even before she ended up in a wheelchair at the age of 30, where she remains a quadriplegic to this day at 38. She was a sweet girl who did nothing to deserve her situation. I can't even be friends with her without her family trying to push her off on me still. Story 14. An unknown one, but CRPS or RSD. I'm not sure exactly how it works, but it usually starts in a limb, causes extreme pain, and contracts that limb. If you've ever seen a person in a wheelchair with their leg pressed up against their chest, they probably have it. A friend of mine got it in her knee at the age of 14 after stepping off a horse and landing on a rock. Her knee contracted into a permanently bent state, and then the pain spread throughout her entire body. She now experiences pain equivalent to something in between cutting off a limb without anesthesia and childbirth in her whole body, 24/7. Sometimes she faints randomly because her body just gives in to the pain, among other things. There's no cure, minimal help, and the strongest painkillers in the world don't do crap. Unlike other diseases that finally end you, this one never ends. Awful stuff. Story 15. Sanfilippo syndrome. It's a rare, about 1 in 70,000 births, type of mucopolysaccharidosis. There are several, that causes the buildup of a glycoprotein called heparan sulfate because patients with this genetic disease lack the enzyme that normally removes it. The buildup of heparan sulfate affects the entire body and all of the organs, but it targets the brain, the worst causing dementia-like symptoms. Children with this disease normally start to show symptoms around 2 or 3 years old after a normal growth period. From there, they will start to decline and lose all of the skills they have learned in their short lives walking, talking, toilet training, eating, etc., and typically pass away in their late teens. There is no cure, and treatments are limited. My youngest daughter has some characteristics of the disease, so she was genetically tested for it. She tested negative, so that's how I learned about it. Scariest time of my life, though. I follow a few people on TikTok and Instagram who are dealing with this terrible condition. It's heartbreaking. Story 16. It hasn't been mentioned, but sleep apnea. While it itself isn't necessarily awful, what happens as a result definitely is. You can't reach effective sleep, so you're exhausted. You also have less oxygen getting to your brain while you sleep, so you slowly start to deteriorate. Luckily, it is very treatable, and you can nearly reverse the damage it causes, but people can go years without knowing, and it can cause any number of nerve and brain complications and damage that can be permanent. My dad has it, but we didn't know for 20 years. He nearly died because his body would react as if he got hit by a car whenever he moved. His inflammatory response didn't function properly and couldn't turn off. He has amnesia. His brain essentially was dying very slowly. He's great now and made a nearly full recovery, but the amnesia is still there slightly, and his inflammatory response still doesn't quite work. He isn't dying anymore, though. Story 17. Me and CFS, myalgic encephalomyelitis or chronic fatigue syndrome. I've said that if I ever got to the stage where I was completely bedridden, unable to eat, drink, move, talk, etc. at all, I would end it. I'm mostly bed and housebound now, so I'm on the cusp of getting that way, and it's absolutely terrifying. Every single thing uses energy, even thinking. One tiny fraction over your energy envelope can cause PM and crashes, which could potentially permanently worsen you. I'm just watching life pass me by. All dreams and aspirations broken, relying on everyone around me, trapped in a body that is broken at 30. Never thought in my wildest dreams I would be in this state. Anorexia nervosa is a pretty crappy, scary disease to live with also, especially for people watching the loved one going through it. I would never wish any of these on my worst enemy. Be careful, people. Look after your body and don't take it for granted like I did. Story 18. Fatal familial insomnia. Fact check this, but it's basically prion disease, where your thalamus begins to fail and can no longer regulate basic bodily functions. This prevents you from being able to sleep, so not only are you suffering from the effects of a prion disease, but you're absolutely messed up all the time from no sleep. There's a famous patient whose family history dates back centuries, and so much of his family had it. He learned the symptoms, and one day he realized he was beginning to experience them, so he submitted himself to a researcher who then observed the guys he went through FFI. I've been terrified of the disease ever since. Story 19. I was doing private care for a middle-aged man last year. He's a mapping engineer. He has ALS. I've been in healthcare for nearly 15 years, but caring for this man, whose cognitive ability is still completely intact, but muscles have wasted away to the point that he requires total care and a ventilator, really did a number on my mental health. He's trapped in his own body, so to speak. The fact that he could silently choke and die, and almost has, from a bit of condensation from the vent tubing hitting the back of his throat, because he no longer has the ability to clear his own airway by at least coughing, was enough to keep me up at night. His wife lived in constant fight or flight. ALS is one messed off disease. It's no way for anyone to live. He cried often. Sometimes I would cry with him. I hope he and his family are doing okay. I wouldn't wish ALS on my worst enemy. Story 20. Here's one I referenced in a philosophy paper years ago. Fibrodysplasia ossificans progressive, the only known disease where human organs and tissue literally change into another organ system. What is it? Well, it turns your connective tissue, muscle, ligaments, tendons, literally into bone. There is no treatment or cure, and it usually starts when you are around 10 years old. Even more fun is that it has been shown when surgeons remove the bones being created and that are replacing your connective tissue, your body heals itself by creating even more bones in those spots. So, starting at about 10 years old, you get to live with your body slowly turning into bone with less and less mobility for however long you live until you die, because your heart is just a bony mass and now longer muscle, or because you can't breathe or pump blood because your connective tissue is all bone now. And There's more. It happens randomly, so you can be fine one day, and a few months later, everything below your knees is just a fused, immovable bone. But you can also be out playing your favorite sport, get a bruise, and bones start to grow outward from the injury. Because of how rare this is, it is believed it is being misdiagnosed as cancer or other fibrosis disorders. This disease is aptly nicknamed Stoneman disease. And since I have to live knowing crap like this can happen to literally anyone, now you do too. Story 21. There's the obvious ones like rabies, Ebola, and cancer. But I heard of a tick-borne disease that can make you allergic to meat, and that would suck so much. On a side note, I'd always heard of mono, of course. I never knew it was such a nightmare. My teenager recently caught it and truly suffered for weeks. There was no wane in the illness from day to day. Normally, you feel a little better after a while, even if it's a little, but not here. Oh no. For weeks, she was unbelievably sick every day, day after day. Her throat swelled so much, she could not eat or drink or rest at all. She ended up in the ER 3 times. Even her saliva could not make it down her throat. It was so swollen and painful. She had these evil-looking things that poked out of her throat that looked like thorns. Plus, her throat turned black for a couple of days. I've never seen someone in such agony. And I've seen a lot. It was truly a nightmare. I know that there are varying degrees of how sick you can get with mono, but I never have heard of it being like this. Not to mention, she also had a highly inflamed liver and spleen. Even weeks after getting better, she cannot do anything strenuous in case her spleen bursts. This illness was such a scary shock for me. I'd always heard that you have a sore throat and feel fatigued. I had never even had a hint that it could be such a difficult, painful, dangerous illness. Absolutely unreal.